Sure, the golden age of Hollywood was glamorous, but do you think all of its stars found lasting success or happiness? From tragic career failures to dying in poverty, here are 10 golden age actors who died alone and forgotten.
What are you looking at me that way for? Oh.
Hey, you big fathead.
What's the big idea?
That's for your swimming pools and your tennis.
Number 10. Veronica Lake. Veronica Lake was a luminous star of 1940s Hollywood. She became an icon of glamour and mystery with her signature peekaboo hairstyle and captivating screen presence. But despite her early success, her life spiraled into financial and personal turmoil, culminating in her death at the age of 50 with little to her name. Lake rose to fame with roles in films such as This Gun for Hire, I Married a Witch, and Sullivan's Travels, just to mention a few. Her ethereal beauty, sultry voice, and on-screen charisma made her one of the most bankable stars of the early 1940s. Paired frequently with Alan Ladd, Lake was celebrated as a leading lady in film noir and romantic comedies. Unfortunately, Hollywood's tendency to pigeonhole actors limited her opportunities. As she struggled to transform to more mature or diverse roles as she aged, the changing trends in Hollywood and her waning popularity left her without the same star power she had earlier. Sadly, she had not been diligent about financial planning or anything necessary to sustain her lifestyle. She filed for bankruptcy in the late 1940s, citing over $100,000 in debts. The loss of her fortune marked the beginning of a steep financial decline. Divorces and failed relationships also drained her finances further. By the 1960s, Lake's acting opportunities had largely disappeared. She took various low-paying jobs, including working as a waitress and hotel clerk, which starkly contrasted with her glamorous past. Her health deteriorated due to chronic alcoholism that led to cirrhosis of the liver and other complications. Her addiction also contributed to her isolation and inability to rebuild her career. In her final years, Lake attempted a modest comeback, including writing an autobiography in 1969. It was titled Veronica, the Autobiography of Veronica Lake. While it garnered some attention, it did not provide her with significant financial stability. Lake died in July 1973 of hepatitis and acute kidney injury. At the time of her death, she was nearly penniless and living in relative obscurity. Her ashes reportedly went unclaimed for years, a poignant reflection of her forgotten status at the time of her passing. Despite her tragic end, Veronica Lake remains a symbol of classic Hollywood allure. Her films, particularly her work in film noir, are still celebrated for their style and influence. Number 9. Louise Brooks. Born in the year 1906, Louise Brooks was a captivating figure in the silent film era. In her prime, she was loved for her striking beauty, iconic bob haircut, and magnetic screen presence. While her life and career were marked by early success and artistic triumphs, there was a gradual descent into obscurity that some might argue she brought on herself. Born in Cherryvale, Kansas, Brooks grew up in a middle-class family. Sadly, she faced a turbulent childhood. Her parents were emotionally distant, and she endured abuse from a family acquaintance, which deeply impacted her. At 15, she decided to pursue a career in dance. She joined the Denishon School of Dancing and Related Arts, where she studied under Ruth St. Denis and Ted Shawn. Brooks transitioned to acting in the mid-1920s after gaining attention as a Ziegfeld Follies dancer in New York. Her screen debut came in The Street of Forgotten Men in 1925. Her striking good looks and naturalistic acting style made her a standout in silent films, and she starred in a series of successful movies like A Girl in Every Port, Pandora's Box, and Diary of a Lost Girl. Her roles in Pandora's Box and Diary of a Lost Girl, directed by G.W. Pabst, are still considered masterpieces. Brooks truly embodied the liberated modern woman of the Jazz Age and became a cultural icon. But despite her early success, Brooks gained a reputation for being difficult to work with. She refused to conform to Hollywood's rigid studio system, rejected influential roles, and clashed with powerful figures in the industry. As sound films emerged, her career faltered, partly because she refused voice lessons and partly due to her independent spirit. By the mid-1930s, her acting career had effectively ended. After leaving Hollywood, Brooks struggled financially. She briefly worked as a courtesan and also held various jobs, from sales clerk to radio scriptwriter. At some point, she moved to Rochester, New York, where she lived in obscurity for many years. As you might have guessed, Brooks became an alcoholic and experienced periods of severe depression. In the 1950s, film historians rediscovered Brooks' work, particularly her collaborations with Pabst. Her films gained recognition as pioneering achievements in cinema. Encouraged by this renewed interest, Brooks wrote essays and her memoir, Lulu in Hollywood, in 1982. These works showcased her intelligence and sharp wit, but her time in the spotlight was long gone. Brooks died alone of a heart attack in her small Rochester apartment on August 8, 1985, at the age of 78. Though her final years were marked by solitude, we find it consoling that she lived long enough to see her legacy celebrated, no doubt as a trailblazer of cinema and an enduring icon of the silent film era. Number 8. Frances Farmer. Frances Farmer was a brilliant yet deeply troubled actress whose life surely reflected the darker side of Hollywood. Known for her striking beauty, immense talent, and rebellious spirit, she achieved fame in the 1930s and 1940s before her struggles with mental illness, legal battles, and institutionalization that led to her tragic decline. Frances Farmer was born in 1913 to a middle-class family in Seattle, Washington. As a teenager, she gained attention for her essay, God Dies, as it won a high school writing contest and drew both acclaim and controversy for its atheistic themes. She later attended the University of Washington, studying drama and journalism. Sure, she was brilliant, but ultimately, Farmer chose a different path. Her acting career began in the mid-1930s. After winning a talent contest, she was offered a contract with Paramount Pictures. She quickly made an impression in Hollywood, starring in notable films like Come and Get It in 1936, The Toast of New York in 1937, and Son of Fury in 1942. Her naturalistic acting style set her apart from many of her contemporaries, and critics often praised her performances. There was one problem, though. Farmer disliked Hollywood's superficiality and conformity. She openly criticized the industry and refused to play its games. This rebelliousness hurt her career as studio executives began to see her as difficult to work with. She also turned to theater, joining the Group Theater in New York. Here, she hoped to focus on more meaningful artistic work. However, her time there was brief, and she struggled to find lasting opportunities. By the early 1940s, Farmer's personal and professional life unraveled. She began drinking heavily and exhibited erratic behavior, leading to legal troubles and public scandals. After several arrests for public intoxication and disorderly conduct, she was declared mentally ill and institutionalized in 1943. Her time in psychiatric hospitals was marked by harrowing abuse, including reports of electroconvulsive therapy, forced medication, and possibly even a lobotomy, though the latter claim remains debated. These experiences left her deeply scarred and effectively ended her career. Farmer was released from institutional care sometime in the 1950s, but she never regained her former success. She attempted a brief comeback, working in regional theater and hosting a local television show, Frances Farmer Presents, in Indianapolis. But despite these efforts, she lived in relative obscurity and continued to struggle with health and financial issues. Farmer died on August 1, 1970, from esophageal cancer. Sadly, she was 56 years old, and she died alone, with her once promising career and life overshadowed by tragedy.
It seems beautiful because you don't understand. Those flying fish, they're not leaping for joy. They're jumping in terror. Bigger fish want to eat them.
Number 7. Edith Barrett. Born in 1907, Edith Barrett was a talented stage and screen actress whose life and career were marked by early promise, a notable marriage, and a tragic decline into poverty and isolation. Though she found success in theater and Hollywood, her later years were overshadowed by personal struggles and financial difficulties. Her tragic story is probably why you never heard of her. To tell it, we have to take it back to her early life. Edith Barrett was born on January 19, 1907, in Roxbury, Massachusetts. She grew up in a family with strong ties to the arts. This, in fact, influenced her decision to pursue acting as a career. Barrett began her career in theater, where her talent for dramatic roles and her delicate, ethereal appearance quickly gained attention. Barrett made her mark in the theater during the 1920s and 1930s. She performed in several acclaimed productions and became associated with prestigious theater groups. Her stage work showcased her versatility as an actress, and she earned respect for her ability to convey deep emotion and complexity in her roles. Barrett then transitioned to film in the 1940s, appearing in a handful of movies. One of her most notable performances was I Walked with a Zombie in the year 1943. It is a cult classic directed by Jacques Tourneur. And to her credit, Barrett delivered a haunting and memorable performance, which solidified her place in cinematic history. In 1938, Edith Barrett married Vincent Price, a rising star in Hollywood known for his work in horror films. The couple had one son, Vincent Barrett Price, but their marriage was tumultuous. Barrett's fragile health and mental struggles put a strain on their relationship, and they divorced in 1948. After her divorce, Barrett's acting career faltered. Opportunities became scarce, and she struggled to maintain her position in the entertainment industry. As the demand for her talents waned, she faced mounting financial difficulties. Barrett spent her later years in relative obscurity, battling ill health and financial struggles. She reportedly lived alone and relied on modest support from friends and family. Edith Barrett died on February 22, 1977, at the age of 70. Her passing marked the quiet end of a life once filled with artistic promise and acclaim. Number 6. Jean Bello. You would find that this is also a story about Jean Harlo. You see, Jean Bello played a pivotal role in the life and career of her iconic daughter. She wasn't just a controlling stage mother, she heavily influenced Harlo's decisions and contributed to her eventual downfall. As you would expect, things didn't go down well for her either. Jean Bello's own life was marked by ambition, mismanagement, and tragedy, which ultimately brought on her death in obscurity. So who was Jean Bello? She was born sometime in 1891 and grew up in Kansas City, Missouri. Ambitious and strong-willed, she married Montclair Carpenter and gave birth to Harleen Harlo Carpenter, later known as Jean Harlo, in 1911. Bello nicknamed her daughter the Baby and was fiercely protective, pushing her into the spotlight from a young age. After a divorce, Bello moved to Los Angeles with her daughter, determined to see her succeed in Hollywood. Unfortunately, Bello was known for her overbearing nature. She overshadowed her daughter's independence and made critical career decisions on her behalf. This brings us to Jean Harlo's stardom. Under her mother's guidance, Jean Harlo became one of Hollywood's biggest stars in the 1930s, with iconic roles in films such as Hell's Angels, Red Dust, Dinner at 8, and Libeled Lady. Harlo's beauty, charisma, and talent earned her the nickname the Platinum Blonde and established her as a symbol of glamour. However, behind the scenes, Bello controlled much of Harlo's finances and career, often prioritizing her own desires over her daughter's well-being. Harlo's immense earnings should have provided financial security, but Jean Bello's poor financial management and lavish spending drained her daughter's fortune. Bello made extravagant purchases, maintained a luxurious lifestyle, and frequently mishandled funds. Despite earning millions during her career, Harlo was reportedly in debt at the time of her death in 1937 at just 26 years old from kidney failure. Jean Bello's life spiraled downward following her daughter's untimely death. Harlo's passing not only left Bello devastated, but also without her primary source of income. She continued to live beyond her means, squandering what little money remained from Harlo's estate. Bello also alienated herself from those around her due to her domineering and erratic behavior. Jean Bello died alone and destitute in 1958, and many would say that she deserved it. Sadly, she spent her final years in obscurity, with her reputation marred by the perception that she had exploited her daughter's fame and fortune for her own gain. Overall, we believe Jean Bellow's life serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of stage parenting, financial mismanagement, and personal ambition overriding familial bonds. Whether Jean Harlo remains celebrated as one of Hollywood's brightest stars, her mother is remembered as a tragic figure whose decisions contributed to her daughter's struggle and her own ultimate downfall.
Afraid? Afraid of what?
Number 5. Peg Entwistle. This is a tragic story that surrounds the iconic Hollywood sign itself. Perched 45 feet high atop the Los Angeles hills, it now comprises 9 dazzling white letters. These letters no doubt command attention as one of the world's most renowned cultural symbols ever. In fact, it draws in over 10 million visitors annually to Griffith Park. While it stands as a must-see attraction for most, it signifies something entirely different for young and hopeful actors who yearn for fame. Yes, it symbolizes so much more to them. It is just as much an emblem of the city's rich history as it is a beacon of optimism for their own glittering futures. However, beneath its glamorous facade lies a somber tale, an event that shook Hollywood to its very core, and that is none other than the tragic death of Peg Entwistle. On the fateful night of September 16, 1932, a young actress by the name of Peg Entwistle departed from her uncle's residence, journeyed to the nearby Hollywood sign, ascended a maintenance ladder to the apex of the letter H, and then jumped right off. She had tragically ended her life at the tender age of 24. But of course, the story did not begin here. Notably, this tragic incident coincided with the waning era of silent films, so this was a time when the emergence of talkies was building momentum. And of course, this was also the zenith of the studio system. This system was dominated by industry giants like 20th Century Fox, RKO Pictures, Paramount Pictures, Warner Brothers, and Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer. Now, like countless others, Entwistle ventured to Hollywood with dreams of emulating stars like Greta Garbo and Marlene Dietrich. She was born Millicent Lillian Entwistle on February 5, 1908, in Wales. It is uncertain what happened to her mother, but by 1912, Entwistle and her father Robert had immigrated to America. They eventually settled in New York, with Robert finding work as a theater stage manager. Despite enduring personal hardships in her youth, Entwistle commenced her stage journey when she was 17. By 1925, she graced Broadway productions. She was said to leave such a lasting impression on her peers. One of them was a young Betty Davis, who aspired to emulate her performance in The Wild Duck. If Betty Davis wanted to be her, then we are certain that Entwistle was something special. A year later, Entwistle earned admission into the esteemed New York Theater Guild. It seemed like she was on track to becoming a star, but sadly, things would start to go wrong. By 1931, the Great Depression had inflicted severe blows by causing plays to shut down shortly after opening. Abandoning New York, Entwistle journeyed westward to Los Angeles. She must have hoped that a new location would do her good. We mean, nothing says dedicated like pursuing a film career in Hollywood's golden age in Hollywood, right? So she took up residence with her uncle, Charles. Unfortunately, she was not the only one who had this thought. Amidst the influx of aspiring starlets, there was a new problem: the challenge of distinguishing herself in order to secure roles. We imagine she did all she could, trying and trying, but nothing is working out. On the fateful night of September 16, 1932, she must have had enough. She departed her uncle's bungalow on Beechwood Drive. She claimed to be meeting friends at a nearby drugstore. Instead, she ventured into the canyon, ascended to the top of the H, and jumped to her death. Since her untimely demise, Peg Entwistle has ascended into Hollywood lore, but the truth remains. She died alone because she fell prey to a system that tends to be unfair to those who come close.
Isn't that positively stunning?
I haven't really paid my respects to your father. I mean, not really.
Well, now is an excellent time. Right away.
Number 4. John Gilbert. Renowned as the Great Lover for his romantic roles and striking screen presence, John Gilbert was one of the most celebrated actors of the silent film era. Born John Cecil Pringle on July 10, 1897, in Logan, Utah, Gilbert experienced a tumultuous childhood. His parents, both involved in theater, separated when he was young. After a strained relationship with his stepfather, Gilbert left home and pursued a career in Hollywood, working as an extra and assistant director before breaking into acting. Gilbert began his acting career in the 1910s and gained recognition in the 1920s. Signed by Fox Film Corporation, he quickly became a matinee idol known for his dashing looks and charisma. His breakout role came in Monte Cristo, which showcased his acting prowess and romantic appeal. In 1924, Gilbert signed with MGM, where his career skyrocketed. He became a top box office draw, starring in a series of successful films like The Merry Widow and The Big Parade, 1925, one of the most acclaimed silent films of the era. Despite his success in silent films, Gilbert's career faltered with the advent of talkies. Some rumors suggested his voice was unsuited for sound, but recordings and his performances in early sound films like His Glorious Night, 1929, revealed this to be untrue. Instead, his decline was likely due to conflicts with MGM studio head Louis B. Mayer, who reportedly sabotaged Gilbert's career. Mayer disliked Gilbert personally and allegedly assigned him subpar roles to diminish his stardom. By the early 1930s, Gilbert's once brilliant career had faded. He appeared in fewer films, many of which failed to capture the magic of his earlier work. As his career declined, Gilbert turned to alcohol, which worsened his financial and emotional struggles. His health deteriorated, and he became increasingly reclusive. John Gilbert died of a heart attack on January 9, 1936, at the age of 38. His premature death was attributed to years of heavy drinking and the stress of his professional and personal decline. If you made it this far, do hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any updates from us. Number 3. Barbara Lamar. Widely known as the girl who is too beautiful, Barbara Lamar was a prominent actress, screenwriter, and socialite of the silent film era. From her dazzling career to her striking beauty, you would think she had the perfect life. Sadly, it was marred by personal struggles, a scandalous lifestyle, and an untimely death at the height of her fame. Barbara Lamar was born Reatha Dale Watson on July 28, 1896 in Yakima, Washington. Her family moved frequently during her childhood, but eventually settled in California. From a young age, Lamar demonstrated a rebellious streak and a love for the spotlight. Lamar made her film debut in 1920's Harriet and the Piper. She quickly gained attention for her dramatic performances and striking features. Then came the label, "The Girl Who Is Too Beautiful." It was reportedly given by a police officer who commented on her arresting looks. True or not, the label soon ensured that Lamar became a symbol of glamour and sensuality. From The Nut, starring opposite Douglas Fairbanks, to The Three Musketeers and The Eternal City, she starred in over 20 films during her brief career. Off-screen, Lamar was known for her lavish lifestyle, wild parties, and relationships with influential men. She lived a life of excess, indulging in alcohol, drugs, and late-night revelry. Eventually, it began to take a toll on her health. She married 5 times, with her turbulent relationships often making headlines. Despite her success, she fell prey to a problem most of her contemporaries faced. That is, struggling to manage her finances and frequently living beyond her means. Lamar's relentless lifestyle and substance abuse severely affected her health. By 1925, she was battling tuberculosis and nephritis. Her weight plummeted, and she became increasingly frail. Despite her condition, Lamar continued working, no doubt driven by financial pressures and the fear of being forgotten by Hollywood. She collapsed on set several times, and her health rapidly declined. On January 30th, 1926, Barbara Lamar died at the age of 29. Her death shocked the film industry and her fans, who mourned the loss of one of the silent era's brightest stars. Despite her significant earnings during her career, Barbara Lamar died nearly penniless. Her extravagant lifestyle, frequent marriages, and lack of financial planning left her in financial ruin by the time of her untimely death. Her son, Marvin Carville Lamar, who was later adopted by actress Zasu Pitts, went on to have a successful life that kept her memory alive.
Where is that villain, Captain Hook? I'll slice him up and throw him to that crocodile.
Number 2. Bobby Driscoll. It goes without saying that Bobby Driscoll possessed an innate talent for acting, as he was discovered quite unexpectedly. He was only 5½ when he was discovered in a barbershop somewhere in Altadena, California. Throughout his 17-year career spanning from 1943 to 1960, he consistently delivered convincing performances on both the silver screen and television. Notable highlights of his filmography include The Fighting Sullivans in 1944, The Song of the South in 1946, So Dear to My Heart in 1948, and The Window in 1949. His role in The Window notably earned him the Academy Award for Outstanding Juvenile Actor in the year 1950. That same year, he portrayed Jim Hawkins in Walt Disney's film Treasure Island. This role further solidified his position as a star, so it was not surprising that he received his Hollywood star on Vine Street shortly after. In 1950, Bobby Driscoll became the 9th of only 12 children in Hollywood's history to be honored with an Academy Juvenile Award for exceptional performances in feature films. During his peak years at Disney Studios, Driscoll was raking in $1,750 every week. Factor in the rate of inflation since then, and you will see that it was a whole lot of money. Sadly, the success of this fast-rising star did not last forever. The downward spiral of this child star began as he started to grow old. As the story goes, the lovable typecast of Driscoll is about to change. During a project meeting following the completion of Peter Pan, Disney stated that Driscoll seemed more suited for roles as a young bully rather than a beloved protagonist. Then came puberty. Like some 16-year-olds, Driscoll was hit with severe acne, so this change in boyish physical appearance was an instant setback that resulted in waning interest from Hollywood studios. So, despite his acclaimed voice work as Peter Pan in the 1953 animated film, his acting career was halted at 16. With prematurely terminated contracts and an inability to secure more roles, surely you can imagine how badly this was going to end. Consequently, during his post-Disney years, he managed to find some prominence on American television in various series and dramas such as Dragnet, Medic, and Climax. He still found roles in anthology programs like Fireside Theater, Schlitz Playhouse of Stars, and TV's Reader's Digest, but none of this came close to his earlier works. In the mid-1950s, Driscoll grappled with drug addiction. To make things worse, Driscoll found himself on the wrong side of the law. With several encounters with law enforcement officers, Driscoll was eventually sentenced as a drug addict in 1961. Upon his release in early 1962, he pursued common jobs and reconnected with the Los Angeles art scene. After his parole expired in 1964, he relocated to New York City and immersed himself in the local avant-garde under the mentorship of pop art icon Andy Warhol. Somewhere in all of that, Driscoll made efforts at rehabilitation, but his tainted reputation hindered his return to the industry. This ultimately dug him deeper into a downward spiral. Considering he could not revive his acting career, he was thrust into a world of financial hardship. The end result was even more tragic. Bobby Driscoll was found dead in an abandoned East Village tenement on March 30th, 1968. Imagine being discovered by a group of children playing in an abandoned housing block. Even more heartbreaking is the fact that he was buried in an unmarked pauper's grave on Hart Island. We believe this might be the most heartbreaking end to a once promising career.
There's one of the finest little weenies that ever graced a paper plate.
Number 1. Marie Prevost. Known for her comedic talent, beauty, and charisma, Marie Prevost was a beloved star of silent and early sound film eras. Marie Prevost was born Mary Bickford Dunn in November 1896 in Sarnia, Ontario, Canada. After her father's death, she moved with her family to Los Angeles. There she worked as a secretary before setting her sights on the entertainment industry. In time, her striking looks and vibrant personality quickly caught attention. Prevost began her career in 1915 with Mack Sennett's Keystone Studios. She started out as one of his famed bathing beauties. Her comedic timing and charm stood out, and she quickly transitioned into leading roles. She gained popularity with silent comedies and romantic dramas, starring in films like Kiss Me Again, Manhandled, and The Marriage Circle. Her naturalistic acting and vivacious personality made her a favorite among audiences. By the 1920s, she was one of the most sought after in Hollywood. However, the transition to sound films in the late 1920s proved challenging for Prau. Although she had a pleasant speaking voice, the shift brought heightened competition, and she began to lose leading roles to younger actresses. Her struggles in the industry were compounded by personal tragedies, including the death of her mother in a car accident in 1926. This loss devastated Prau, and it marked the beginning of her downward spiral. As her career waned, Prau turned to alcohol and food for comfort. Sadly, this brought on a significant weight gain. Hollywood, with its unforgiving focus on appearance, further marginalized her, and she was relegated to supporting roles in low-budget films. Prau's financial difficulties worsened as her career declined. By the mid-1930s, she was deeply in debt and struggling to find work. She became increasingly isolated, battling depression and alcoholism. Marie Prau died alone in her Los Angeles apartment on January 21, 1937, at the age of 40. Her body was discovered 2 days later, and the cause of death was officially listed as acute alcoholism and malnutrition. Tragically, she had been living in poverty, unable to afford adequate food. If anything, Marie Prau's death highlights the darker side of Hollywood, where fame could vanish overnight, leaving stars abandoned and forgotten. Still think it's all glitz and glamour behind the scenes? Do share your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button. You also can't miss the next video on screen.